Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's great to be here as always. Thank you for watching the VSO Gun Channel, and I have something interesting to show you guys here today. Now, as a point of process, I don't typically discuss price point because I'm a capitalist and I believe for the most part that the market should decide on the prices that a company sets. You know, they have the discretion to say, hey, we can do it for this, we need to make this much on it to stay in business and, you know, work and all of our stuff. I understand that. The only time that I really talk about price is when it's outrageous in either direction. Well, what I have for you here today is the HS225 Hydra from DNT Optics. And this is a multifunction thermal sight that comes in at under $1,000. And the performance on this thing is pretty impressive. So I guess what I would like to do to hop into it is it's very simplistic in its setup. There are only 4 buttons on the thing up here on top. And there's the on button, the zoom button, the menu button, and the record button. That's really it. It comes with a cap, and I find this cap to be slightly annoying, so we'll take it off for the rest of this. And it has a rubber eyepiece here for when it's really contrasty outside, super bright. You're going to want to use that sort of thing, but it comes right off if you would like it to. And as far as data transfer is concerned, if you want to get the files off of this, there is a USB-C port right here. You jack it right into your computer, pull the data over, and then shut her down. We're going to go to the range, and I'm just going to sort of walk you through a few things, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to give you my impressions on how this thing stacks up and where it could possibly improve. Now, I don't know when this is appearing in the video, but these are the first shots that I'm taking through this setup. And I broke character a little bit in that I actually read the manual, which is something that I never do. Basically, this was fairly intuitive for me to figure out, but there are a few settings that I wanted to find specifically that I think are value added for this thing, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of knew where they were. So this thing has a one-shot zero function, and that's what we're going to do really quick. Is I've got this thing mounted up on the BRN 180 Gen 3. There is a full video out on this one. All right, so I've actually hit my first snag on today's eval, and that is that we can't actually record the screen while we're doing the zeroing. So as soon as you go into any of the menus, it stops recording, which is kind of lame, so I can't show you guys how it works, but basically the way this works is you fire a round, you figure out where it lands, you then have the ability to center the reticle and freeze the frame and then do the adjustments. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to come back and see if it worked. All right, my target has gone cold, but there are some steel targets down there that are a different temperature. So let's see if we can hit one of them. And record. Recording. I'm going to say that it works. I'm sitting here in post-production, and I've noticed that there is a perceptible desync on the audio to video when it comes to the Hydra. Now, all of these onboard recording digital optics do this sort of thing. It has something to do with the compression of the video and compression of the audio and then smashing them together into a single file. They all do it. Even the super expensive stuff does this. It's just a question of how bad is it. And this one's about 17 frames, which is definitely not the worst that I've ever seen, but it does exist, and you should be aware of that. This is what that actually looks like. Again, this isn't the worst that I've ever seen, but for me personally, it doesn't really matter because, hello, video editing, right? But you should be aware of it. Now, the other thing that I would like to point out is there's some functionality in here when it comes to its ability to pre and post record. And I'm assuming that this has something to do with its ability to
impact record, which basically means that you run around with the thing on, and when you fire a shot, it will have recorded it for you. And to do that, it must store some percentage of the data on board, kind of like what a high-speed camera does, where it's constantly recording and dumping the data, and then basically when you trigger it, that's what it actually saves the data.
Let's talk about power plant. The optic runs on one of these, and it simply goes into this port right here. It does have an indicator for the negative and positive, so it does tell you which way to orient it, right? Like, and it does have a sort of like on, off, and sleep mode that'll be indicated by this right here. So if I put that in there and I power this on, there's a blue light there. And when it is in sleep mode or fast recovery mode, I don't know what it's called. It's not in the manual. You can recover it very quickly. You can see it's orange there. Maybe I'll do it over here. Orange light. And if I push this button, it comes right back to blue, and now the optic is back up. And I'm assuming that's a battery saving function. As far as charging it is concerned, it comes with this little deck here, and this will accept 2 of those batteries, and while they're charging, there'll be some indicators there. The video output on this thing is a little bit strange. It is a 1024 by 768, and it comes out at 44.8 frames per second. This is a representation of what that will look like against a full frame video. However, I find this very annoying, so we're going to blow this image up for your viewing pleasure as we go through some of the internal settings and capabilities of this optic. The first thing that I would like to highlight is that it has a digital zoom capability. So it starts out at 3 power, then goes up to 4.5, then to 6x, then to 9x, and then to 12x. Continuing to push the button cycles it back through to 3x. So you can't go up to 4x and then go back to 3x unless you cycle through all of those capabilities. And as you can see, as a digital zoom, the quality degrades as you increase that magnification. If we go into reticle settings in the menu, there are a couple different toggles here. There's the color, which is red, green, yellow, black, or white. Personal preference for me is I like the red. And then if we scroll up and go to the reticles, there's a whole bunch of different reticles in here. And I'll just go ahead and scroll through all of these options for you so you can see the breadth of availability there. And of course, you can change it to whatever color you want. And then, of course, there is a way to completely turn the reticle off.
Hey, say hello, Mr. Assistant. No, stay in frame.
The Hydra runs on 4 different color palettes: white hot, black hot, red hot, and iron hot. Now, these are of differing utility depending on the environmental conditions and the subject and the environment that you're working in. I'm just going to shift through these a couple times to give you a look at what they look like, and Finn is running up and down the berms at the range. I would say that personally speaking, I like the iron hot look the most, but probably the most useful is the white hot on this particular day. And you can toggle through those with a push of a button. You don't have to go into any menu, so you can get the best resolution for that particular instance. There's a couple different algorithms that the Hydra uses to collect data and express as an image. Everything that you've seen up to this point is in the natural setting, and now we're going to switch to enhanced. There is a little bit of change when going to that setting, but I think the real differentiation comes when we switch to the highlight mode. I think this makes it look very contrasty, but it does filter out a whole lot of the background noise. The unit has a hotspot tracking program, and as you can see, it's going to pick up the hottest thing that it sees and use that as what it should be following. So if you're using this on a particularly warm day like this one, where it was about 86 degrees and super sunny outside, we were able to get it to jump to the background barrel that is going to be considerably hotter than Finn the dog here. But
when that is eliminated from the frame, then it will jump to the live subject. I think one of my favorite features of the DNT brand is the picture-in-picture or PIP mode that puts a second, more zoomed-in window within your main heads-up display, giving you a more detailed look of exactly where your reticle is, so you get the blown-out view and the on-target view. This is obviously able to be turned off at will, and you can move it around the screen wherever you want.
The only function I think I'm just going to straight up delete from this overview is the what they call the clip-on feature. So this thing is designed to be either a sight, a handheld, or a clip-on thermal. And what that means is that you put like an LPVO behind this, and you can see that this already takes up a pretty decent footprint on your rifle. Putting an LPVO behind it, I simply do not understand why somebody would do this. It has the capability to do it, and as far as I can tell, all it does is move the menus into the center. I don't know why you would do this, especially with the resolution of this optic being as good as it is.
Ooh, it's a windy day. You can measure the angle, right? I've got a little bit of a specificity test going on here today. I've created a temperature gradient, cold over here, hot over there, and we're gonna see, not only can it detect the gradient, but whether the tall glasses are in the wrong spot or not.
So I'm going to go ahead and speed through this. As you can see, I'm adding hot water to each of these, and as the temperature diffuses through the glasses, you can definitely see that on the extremes, like the boiling water and the just under the boiling water temperature, it doesn't really tell much of a difference. But just about everything else, somewhere between water that's 40 degrees and water that is, you know, body temperature-ish, it's going to be able to differentiate the two. And you can clearly see that those glasses, the tall ones that are the mystery mixtures, are in the wrong place. One more thing that I wanted to point out is this is an instance of where switching color palettes can absolutely give you more information than you otherwise would have had, just depending on the individual target situation.
One of the things that I find very attractive about this is there's a propensity for a lot of these digital optics companies to cram as much weird functionality into the optic as possible, like rangefinders and ballistic calculators and all that sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, DNT does that as well, but this model basically has all the other stuff ripped out of it. So it's the primary functions and really the primary functions only, and that's what I want out of the optic anyway. Now, as far as critiques are concerned, I've just got a couple as far as continuous improvement, future iterations, or maybe they've even integrated some of these things into their other products in the line. I'm not familiar. But the first thing I guess I will give them praise on is right here and here, there are measurements for the torque on the bolts when you assemble the mount. I like this, but the only problem that I have with that is that sometimes can indicate to me when I see stuff like that written on the product itself, it seems to suggest to people who are not very well versed that they can get away without Loctiting these things. So I like that they've included this, but my fear is that some people will think that you can just torque that down to 30 inch-pounds and that you don't have to put a blue Loctite on it. But that is super nitpicky, I'm going to add. That's not really a critique, but what I would like to see changed in future iterations, if we go back to the battery cap here, this battery cap is not captive. While it does have an O-ring on it that prevents, water ingress or anything, I am going to lose this. So oftentimes optics that are in this price point will have some kind of tether on there that prevents this cap from being lost, because this is not a part that I can go to Walmart and get. And if I lose this, I am screwed. There's no way this optic will operate.
So in closing today, there's just one more thing that I would like to mention as far as like critiques and continuous improvement are concerned. This is, again, super easy one. The support from the manual, I did not find particularly helpful. There are like double functions of certain buttons and stuff like that because there's only a couple buttons. And there are some like hidden features that if you haven't used the thing before, you just have to play with it a little while to figure out. For instance, and this is why I left it in the video, there is a way to actually record the one-shot zero function thing. But you have to change a bunch of settings around, and I just happened to stumble upon it while I was working on the thing. And there is no indication from the optic that you are recording, and there is no indication in the manual that you can do that. And that's just one, again, small thing, but I think it's indicative of, I think they need to go in and completely rewrite the manual, basically. Or even have like dedicated videos on their website of how to do individual functions. And that would be exceptionally helpful. But anyway, I'm being super nitpicky here. Thanks to DNT Optics for sending this one out for eval. And I think it's definitely something that you should be considering if you're looking for a low-cost thermal capability.